Hello everyone, today we're taking a look at BetaFPV's new 5-in-1 flight controller. You might remember in the Air series, I think they were calling these the Air series, we saw this particular board, which is a 4-in-1. It has the receiver on the outside, or the external receiver. This is all one piece, which can clean up your builds, and it is a build technically because there are no motor plugs. But I think the most important thing, in micros at least, is weight. Got our scale all zeroed out. 5.48 grams. Zeroed out. Now with the external receiver on the brushless board we've seen, 5.39 grams. So this is actually lighter as it is. Now let's do a little bit of what Nightwing on the Tiny Whoop video did by just taking off this plastic that comes on the receiver to see how much more weight can we save. I am peeling off the foam just to retain that. Didn't shorten the wires or anything. Now the 4-in-1 is 5.26 grams. So just as a reminder, this is 0.2 grams heavier, and if you're going for ultra low weight, that might mean something to you. And yes, I do have the grommets antennas, the stock stuff that come with it. Both, regardless of which one you order, does come with this 180-degree angled connector on it, which I do like. Out of the box, you are going to have to solder on this lead as well. So this is really for someone who's comfortable with soldering. I will say that you notice on mine, I've got solder on all the pads. I have used both of the ones that I was sent for review from BetaFPV. I've got one in the build here. You know, I wanted to fly them because if you're not flying them, have you really tested them at all? And of course, part of my flying is always crashing as well. So I'll have that flight video, just a random flight. I only recorded like with flight audio, maybe half a dozen flights. So I pull one together and I'll put it in there. But the solder pads are actually pretty decent to work with as far as the external motor solder pads. But when you get in here, while these are decent sized, they're very close together. And if you aren't experienced soldering, I would definitely get a practice solder board or some dead flight controllers if you happen to be living in an area that has other FPV pilots that you can practice on without a worry of mucking something up, because that's so always painful. So we've got some solder pads in here, and we've got this connector, which it does come with the dongle. We plug this in here, and we are going to take a look at Betaflight. Need to do this relatively quickly because it does have a VTX and it could overheat. And I don't want to do that. So the main thing I wanted to look at was the ports. Of course, we're using a couple of ports. UART3 is using our serial RX for our Express LRS, and then we have our VTX on UART2. So UART1 and UART4 are the spares you want to use. So if you wanted to use this for an HD build, you could do that by using one of the spare UARTs. I did put a tune on this. I think this is actually a tune I got from Dan, and I may have just tweaked it out a little bit. I'll give him credit even if I can't remember. I appreciate the tune, Dan. And it worked just fine on that 75mm build, which isn't an ideal build. That's why I'm not really talking about it that much. We look here in the receiver tab. It does still have the bind receiver button down here. As you can see, it is flashing because I don't have my radio on. You can update this over Express LRS, and actually I ended up updating the one in my the current build that I have here on the desk because I was losing bind on this about every second flight. But after I flashed 342, I think it was, or 343, the next incremental version that was available for this particular receiver. I flashed that, and my bind problems went away. So that's easy peasy there. Something that we don't see here, it does have a Bluejay on it as well at 9600 kilohertz. So it's made for the highest efficiency possible with micromotors. I'm not a huge fan of running that high a KV. I would prefer to drop it down to at least 24 or 4800. Excuse me, I'm getting tongue tied this evening. But I prefer stock. I know that's an unpopular opinion. Just it affects how the motors slow down. I can feel this heating up, so I'm going to unplug it. The little board, the processor that they have on this board is the G473. It's kind of supposed to be more efficient, so you should be able to run your PID loop possibly faster or just more efficiently as Betaflight and its versions increase the loads on the flight controller. I already mentioned that it's got Bluejay 9600 kilohertz flash to this, which is good for bidirectional D-shot if you're using that in your PID tunes. It does have blackbox on board. We didn't highlight that when we were looking at the Betaflight, but you may have noticed it. Blackbox is great if you like to do your tuning via blackbox. There's a number of people out there. If you're looking for PID tune help, Brandon Beans is the person that I would hit up. He's very active all over social media, and he is used to have a PID tuning service that you could find, but I think the website that it was listed on no longer open to those sorts of things, or it's not available anymore. But so if you look for Brandon Beans, you see him online, and you'd like to have some PID tuning help, he's someone I can recommend. It is a service. He may help you for free, but he might also not. And if you're not, a good way to motivating somebody is throwing them some coin. Camera connector down here, just like on the other board, is a little bit smaller than we see in a lot of other cameras. Speaking of cameras, I've got the Ant Light in here. This is the normal size connector, so I had to use the solder pads on the bottom of the board to get my camera hooked up, which are these 3 pads right here. All the pads are going to be easier to see on the BetaFPV website, which I'll link down in the video description. Really to both of these boards. They have very clear, high-resolution image. They might be model images, but still, it shows you where all the pads are, and along with videos like this or others, it gives you an idea how close the pads are together. But this would be a board for probably our folks that are a little bit more experienced and have some experience specifically with soldering. And the kicker, whether you want a super clean build with the 5-in-1 or you want the lighter build with a 4-in-1, of course, various Express LRS receivers might come in at different weights, but I'm confident it won't come in at least too much heavier than this one if you wanted to go with the 4-in-1 and then add your own receiver. But the kicker that I probably should have started with, maybe outside of the weight because that's my own bias, is the price point. The 4-in-1 is $45, actually $44.99. The 5-in-1 is $49.99, or $50. That seems like to roll back the prices to 2017. At least that's my take. We haven't seen prices decreasing, and I don't know how they're managing to do that, but obviously this is kind of setting the bar. We're going to expect 1S flight controllers from our other manufacturers light, and as far as I'm concerned, reliable. Remember, I have 2 of the... Hold on. Technically, I have 4 using the 4-in-1s. 2 of these were prototypes, and then these other... I'm trying to hold them all up as proof, and then the other 2 were productions. So I ran these around for weeks, and then we had the 75mm version. So I have had... The only issue that I've had is with the 5-in-1 that's in this particular build, not on the other one. I'm only on this one, because I've got 2. Where'd that other one go? I just had it in my hands a second ago. Only on the one in this one did the binding get lost after, say, 2 flights. It was happening pretty quickly, got pretty annoying. And so, like, my first 2 days out, I was like, what's going on? And then I just went ahead and flashed Express LRS again, took care of the problem. And that's easy. I just used the application for Express LRS and Wi-Fi. My computer has both networked and hardwired and Wi-Fi. Connected to that, flashed it, 433, I think was what I flashed on it. Took care of the issue. Might have just been in the implementation where that flashing of the firmware, getting it on the board initially, something didn't go quite right that would cause it to lose bind after a couple of power cycles. But again, that problem solved, so not really a problem to make it a sticking point, but $49.99 and $44.99. And you get the reverse connector on there, which oftentimes I think those cost more than the straight line connectors, right? Should have looked that up before I started recording, but this just seems like all sorts of value that BetaFPV has come up with. Now, I know there's some people that have had troubles with just about every brand. You might say, well, I can't buy Happy Model stuff because it hasn't worked well with me. And somebody else says, well, I only buy Happy Model because it works great for me. And people could say the same thing about BetaFPV and pretty much every other company. That's just kind of how it goes. In my case, I've got 6 of these 4-in-1 boards and 3 of the 5-in-1 boards. And they've all worked normally for me, with that one hiccup having to flash, Express LRS, so it wouldn't lose bind anymore. So, yeah, pretty amazing. I am impressed, and I think it's good for all of us. Even if you don't like these, I think this is good for all of us, because as companies come out with products at this product point, with this feature set, Other companies got a match, right? It's going to be hard to compete. Everything's a competition. Life's a competition. So if you do have any questions really about either one of these, the 4-in-1 or the 5-in-1, please let me know in the comment section below. I appreciate your time. And thanks for watching.